Well, good evening, everybody. This is John Craig, and you are with me for another edition of Walking in Spirit and Truth here on the Lamb Network, also on the Life of Worship Ministries YouTube channel. And it's really good that you get to be part of my evening. No, or I get to be part of your evening. You can look at it either way. It's been a couple weeks since we've been able to get together. There's been a lot of things happening on our end, and we've not been able to do the show. But if you're listening to the War Room, we gave an update on how my mother was doing, and so thank you all for praying for her and praying for us as we traveled down to Houston to be with her during that surgery. And the word was that they were looking at releasing her today to go to the skilled nursing facility. So that's a big step out. This is after major surgery and what 3 days in ICU, and so she's doing moving along. And so I say thank you for your prayers. Who is Life of Worship Ministries, or who are we? And we're here in Amarillo, Texas, and we have different broadcasts that we do throughout the week, and you can join us at any time that you like. We would love for you to join us on Shabbat, where we have our Torah portion at noon on Shabbat. That's from 12 to 2 Central Time, and you can join us here at the Life of Worship Ministries YouTube channel. If you'll just subscribe to the channel and hit that bell, then you will get the notification whenever we go live. And so we have our Torah portion at noon Central Time, and we have a good discussion, and we've been doing something new. We've been adding people into our discussion as part of the chat online for our greater Life of Worship congregation across these United States and up into Canada. So that makes for a lively discussion and interesting feedback and insight that people can share. And then also we do meet locally here in Amarillo, and you can join us where we've been meeting over at the the suites, the certain suites. My mind just went blank on it. Okay, I'll get it to you here in just the oh, all right, I'll get it to you. But we are meeting locally in a local hotel behind Mardell. So in Amarillo, I'll get it to you. It's just bugging me. All right, so we also, after the tour portion, we have a little break, and where people get a bite to eat because people bring food, and if you come, bring some food, and we have just some good time of fellowship. And then we have our encounter service where we come back online with everybody for a time of praise and worship, as well as followed in a second stream for a message. So just be part of our Shabbat, and we are blessed to have you. And also, just wanted to throw this out there as well. We are listener supported, and those that are part of this ministry that meet locally, as well as those of you that are online, you can give online at our let me see if I can put up a banner for it at www.lifeofworshipamarillo.org. Yeah, just go in there. There's a tab at the top that says donate. Click that tab and it'll take you to a place where you can give online. Or you can look on our website. You'll see our physical address, and you can feel free to send a money order, a check, or even cash in the mail. That way, you can send it that direction if you prefer not to use the webs. All right. So that is it for all of the groundwork. Let's get into what we've been studying. I've missed our study here for this book of Jubilees. It's been good, hasn't it? I've been enjoying it. So we're going to be picking up where we left off, which was over in the 16th chapter of Jubilees, and around about we'll go back just a little bit. Let's go back to verse 15, because this is talking about Isaac being born at the feast of the first fruits of the harvest. Well, which first fruits of the harvest was it? Well, it seems to be, now this is the book of Jubilees, because I know that it's been taught in many of the Hebrew root circles that Isaac was born on Passover, and And yet there's a lot of things that seem to cycle through, that things happen on Shavuot, the Feast of Pentecost. And so uh, it's very interesting. It's also one of those Feast of First Fruits. You say, well, wait a minute, isn't there a Feast of First Fruits that's after Passover? Yes, there is. And but also it's also going to be referred to at Shavuot as well because of the wheat harvest. So nevertheless, we can look at um, however you want to look at it. It seems like everything falls in the book of Jubilees around Shavuot. Why do I say that? Well, Noah gave his sacrifice on Shavuot. It's he, according to Jubilees, when he entered the ark, when the ark came to rest, when all these different things. There's this relationship to Shavuot, and Abraham has some other relationship to Shavuot, and which we talked about here in the past. So I'm not going to go into that, but it's very interesting to me that this is what Jubilees points out. And of course, Jubilees is part of the method of counting the years in terms of 50-year segments. So, and which gives us an idea of how the calendar works uh, at the time that Moses, got this download on the mountain. All right. So let's pick up in verse 15. And it says, and in the 6th year of the 4th week, we came to Abram to the well of the oath, and we appeared unto him as we had told Sarah that we would return to her and she would have conceived a son. And we returned in the 7th month and found Sarah with child before us, and we blessed him, and we announced to him all the things which had been decreed concerning him, that he should not die till he should beget 6 sons more, and should see them before he died, but that in Isaac should his name and seed be called. Well, isn't that interesting that he's going to have at least 6 sons? But we know in his marriage to Keturah, he has 12 more sons. But they would not have the heritage that Isaac would have, because Isaac was the son of promise. And so we have some confirmation here. And just because some of the numbers are a little bit different here than perhaps as we read it regularly in the scriptures in the book of Genesis, it is also to note that it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that it's bringing us a perspective that it's wanting us to focus on. So let's go on. And verse so he begat six sons more, and should see them before he died, and that in Itzhak should his name and seed be called. So there's the lineage that leads to Yeshua. And then verse 17, and that all the seed of his sons should be the other people and be reckoned with the other people. But from the sons of Itzhak, one should become a holy seed and should not be reckoned among the other people. Now, excuse me. So when we look at that, I think one of the things that we should also pay attention to is that he's giving us the lineage, because the lineage is about the seed, and the seed that would come through Isaac, because it says, but from the sons of Isaac, one should become a holy seed and should not be reckoned among the other people, for he should become the portion of El Elyon, and all his seed had fallen into the possession of Elohim, and it should be unto Yahweh, or Yahweh, a people for his possession above all nations, and that it should become a kingdom and priest and a holy nation. Why? Because coming out of Isaac would come a holy seed, then the nation would be holy. Now, what about these other sons of Abraham? Well, we know that from the Exodus account, that when there was the mixed multitude that came out of Egypt, they were allowed to join in with the tribes of Israel. And whatever tribe they joined into, they took that heritage, they took that name, and they too, should they follow the Torah, they keep the feast days, they keep the commandments, and they're obedient to Yahweh and to love him, then they too would also be a holy people. So the same thing would run true with the sons of Abraham, but it's not from their seed that the Messiah would come. This is why it's very important that when we parse the word and we pull it apart and we look at it specifically, as what it's telling us is that it is the people through this seed line that this, not only that through the seed line that from Yitzhak's seed line that Messiah would come, but ultimately we'd see it through the line of David, and we see the lineage when we look in the book of Luke and the book of Matthew, and we see that lineage of Yeshua, and we see how it stays in there. But what's the purpose of all the other sons and all the other, all of the other people, this great nation, and why is it holy and set apart? Why? Because the nation is to protect the seed line. The nation is there to gather around to make sure that seed line is protected. Just like Adam was in charge of the garden and was to guard and protect the garden, which he failed to do. But keeping in mind, then this was still passed down through the generations because of blood, because of the blood covenant. And 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 here we have in the lineage of Abraham and Isaac, now we're saying there's going to be this family, but in order to fully preserve the seed line, is we have to have a holy nation to do that. Well, was it corrupted? Yeah. Did they not go through hard times? Yes. Why? Because the enemy was always trying to go after the seed, after the holy seed. So how do you go after the holy seed? Well, you do your best to corrupt an entire nation so the whole nation would not be holy. And then therefore, Hasatan's goal was to disrupt the seed line to where there's not a holy seed. But for Yah. And that's why we look at all these dimensions here and see why this is so important, and why that we need to make sure that we understand why this is. It's I understand that in the dynamics of all of the ethnos against ethnos, all of these different things between one cabal over another, it's all of these different things that we see that are the controversies of today, uh, where these are just when these controversies become so big and seem so out of hand. It's like, well, where did the common sense go? Where did love your neighbor as yourself go? Why are we pointing out certain people as some more privileged than others, or why some don't add up to another? Through Yeshua, everybody is on the same page. Let's be clear. And it is through Yeshua that everybody can be grafted in, should they say yes to Yeshua. So anyway, when we look at all these different things and we see how it lines up, then this is really a significant verse. And verse 17, and that all the seed, we're in chapter 16 of Jubilees, and that all the seed of his sons should be the other people and be reckoned with the other people. But from the sons of Yitzhak, one should become a holy seed and should not be reckoned among the other people. So very, very interesting clue that the book of Jubilees actually just jumps out. In fact, you know what? I'm just going to underline that whole verse there, because this is the point that we need to do a holy seed. That's our emphasis. And I see Tammy jumping on there with us, and it's good to see you, Tammy. Glad that you could be part of our evening. And you know what? There were some other conversations earlier, so that's pretty cool. Good to have every one of y'all. Whether you're joining us on the Lamb Network, over on Twitch, over at the Lamb network.tv on YouTube, or the Life of Worship Ministries YouTube channel. So we have in verse 18, it says, for he should become the portion of El Elyon, because again, it's talking about a holy seed, so singular, and he should become the holy portion of El Elyon, and all his seed had fallen into the possession of Elohim, and that it should be unto Yahweh, a people for his possession above all nations, and that it should become a and priests and a holy nation. Now, isn't that what this last week's Torah portion was on? When it's talking about in the Torah portion of Yitro, because we see that there at the mountain, Yahweh says, go down there and tell them that you are a kingdom of priests, a kingdom, a royal priesthood. And we see that over in the book of Hebrews as well. So keep this in mind, that this is the structure that Yahweh was setting up. And so I would say also put a little mark there for verse 18, because there has to be, you just can't throw the seed of Messiah into any tribal group out there, and throw it into any nation. You just can't, because why? Because the corruption would be so strong. But in Abraham, well, why Abraham? And why was it through Abraham's seed? Well, remember where he came from? And the household, his father was a pagan priest, and that Abraham was raised in, according to, I think, was it in Jasher or Jubilees, that he was raised and protected and hidden away, and that he went into his father's um, temple and destroyed all the different idols, and the people wanted to kill him, and so keep in mind that why? Because Abraham had a divine revelation of the Most High, and was like, why in the world did all of the known world at this point in time start worshiping these other idols, and which were part of the reason why there was the great flood? I mean, Noah wasn't that far down the generations from the great flood. So, and of course, when you look at some of these other books, you can see that Abraham had spent time with Shem, because Shem was still around, and he would have learned Torah. He would have learned the way of Yah, and he would have then recognized, because of this divine download, he was the one that would carry the seed. It would come through his loins. It would come through his bloodline, because it was promised to him. And Yahweh considered him to be righteous because he believed Yahweh. These are all really important clues, and as we see the ushering in of this kingdom that Yahweh was building. And when you think about a kingdom, well, a kingdom has not only its administration and its authority, and all who help in what they do to support this kingdom in all the different layers. And in all those different layers is also the priesthood, who protects the boundaries. It protects the parameters, so that which would be evil would not come in, and they would teach the people the way of Yahweh. They would teach them give them the instructions of Yahweh, how to live, because when the community lives this way, then the people are protected. I mean, after all, when you read the book of Revelation, if we don't hear and do and obey and live these things out and love Yahweh with our whole heart, then the only thing he can do is step back. The land vomits the people out, and there's no protections. I mean, how many years of being raided by the Midianites? How many times did they have to push back the enemy and fight? How many times did the Bible actually talk about revival being in the land? and a certain good king would come up and destroy all the idols and start reading the Torah again, you know. So, verse 19, and we went our way, and we announced to Sarah all that we had told him, and they both rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And he built there an altar to Yahweh, who had delivered him, and who was making him rejoice in the land of his sojourning. And he celebrated a feast of joy in this month, 7 days, near the altar which he had built at the well of the oath. And he built uh, Sukkot for himself. He built sukkahs for himself and for his servants on this feast, and he was the first to celebrate the feast of Sukkot on the earth. So who was the first to celebrate the feast of Sukkot? Abraham. According to Jubilees, it says that's what he did. That's what he established. But I'm going to say this is it's also when the visitors came, and when did they come? They came in the 7th month after Sarah had birthed Isaac. And so reading the text, according to the text, says he was making them rejoice in the land of his sojourning. That, you know, it's we've also called Sukkot as the season of our joy. And if you're saying, well, what is Sukkot? It's the Feast of Tabernacles. He built a sukkah. He built sukkahs. Why? Because he's got a lot of people with him. Part of his group, you know, is that's around him. And he celebrated the feast of joy in the month of 7 days near the altar which he had built at the well of the oaths. And he built Sukkot, which is the plural for sukkahs, for himself and for his servants on this feast. And he was the first to celebrate the feast of Sukkot on the earth. And during these 7 days, he brought each day to the altar a burnt offering to Yahweh, 2 oxen, 2 rams, 7 sheep, 1 he goat for a sin offering, that he might atone thereby for himself and for his seed. And a thank offering, 7 rams, 7 kids, 7 sheep, 7 he goats, and their fruit offerings and their drink offerings. Why? Because at Sukkot, it's also a feast where we bring in the fruit that come in at the fall, like the pomegranates and others, the grapes and multiple other fruits that come out of the land at that point in time, right? And he burnt all of the fat thereof on the altar, a chosen offering unto Yahweh for a sweet smelling savor. Why? Because the fat belongs to Yahweh. And morning and evening he burnt fragrant substances, frankincense, and galbanum, and stacte, and nard, and myrrh, and spice, and costume. All these 7 he offered, crushed, mixed together in equal parts and pure. And he celebrated this feast during 7 days, rejoicing with all of his heart and with all of his soul, he and all those who were in his house. And there was no stranger with him, nor any that was uncircumcised. Now, by the way, doesn't this kind of tell us something? I think it's very interesting as well, because in the scripture, when we read about Abraham's life, we do see that he did laugh when the visitors told him that he would have a son, and it gives you a little bit of a clue. But isn't it also very interesting, though? It actually makes a point about Abraham, and a part of Abraham we don't really see, that he was rejoicing with all his heart. I think that's really cool to see that. He was rejoicing with all of his heart. What an interesting insight. And with all of his soul. He and all those who were living, those who were in his house, there was no stranger with him. And that he was uncircumcised. And he blessed his, and nor any that was uncircumcised. And he blessed his creator who had created him in his generation, for he had created him according to his good pleasure. For he knew and perceived that from him would arise the plant of righteousness, for the eternal generations, and from him a holy seed, so that it should become like him who had made all things. Oh, wait a minute. That verse is packed. And he blessed his creator who had created him. This is verse 26. And in his generation, for he had created him according to his good pleasure. For he knew and perceived that from him would arise the plant of righteousness for the eternal generations, and from him a holy seed. I think the magnanimity, is that the right word? The enormous feeling of the this huge blessing that was placed on Abraham, and he's celebrating at the time of Sukkot. He's celebrating this tremendous promise that he gets to be the one that brings in the seed, a holy seed. It would not talking about Isaac, but somewhere in his lineage would the Holy One, the Holy Seed come, so that it should become like him who had made all things, so that it, the Holy Seed, should become like him who had made all things. That okay, let me read it again. That it should become like him who made all things, that the Holy Seed would be like him who made all things. Again, when we go back and we say, well, what is it? Well, John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And oh, my mind just went blank on that one. Let's go over to John 1:1. And let's take a look at this, because wait, there it is. Okay, here we go. I'm going to read it. This is reading out of the Sefer version. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with et Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. Yeah, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Yah, and the Word was Yah, and the same was in the beginning with et Elohim, or with Yah, Yahweh, with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men, and the light shines in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. And of course, you can jump down to verse 17, and where it says, oh, verse 14, and the Word was made flesh and tabernacled among us. There we go, Sukkot. And the Word was made flesh and tabernacled among us, and we beheld his glory, and the glory as of the Yahid of the Father, full of grace and truth. So what are we talking about here? Oh no. There we go. Okay. That was I, and he celebrated. Okay, and should become like him who had made all things, and that is really in verse 2. The same was in the beginning. All things, verse 3, were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In other words, right here is this prophetic word, this prophecy that the seed would come from him, that Yahweh would literally be born in the flesh, the one who made all things. I don't know. It just makes me, it just, it's mind blowing. It's boggling my mind. And here it is in the book of Jubilees. And it gives us an interesting perspective about these things. And he blessed and rejoiced and called the name of this feast the feast of Yahweh, a joy acceptable to El Elyon. And we blessed him forever, and all his seed after him throughout all the generations of the earth. because he celebrated this feast in its season according to the testimony of the heavenly tablets. Why? Because Moses was up on the mountain. It was all recorded. It was being given to Moses there on the mountain. For this reason, and it was all recorded in the heavenly tablets. Now being downloaded to Moses on the mountain. Okay. For this reason, it is ordained on the heavenly tablets concerning Israel that they shall celebrate the feast of Sukkot 7 days with joy in the 7th month, acceptable before Yahweh, a statute forever throughout their generations every year. And to this, there is no limit of days, for it is ordained forever, according to Israel, that they should celebrate it and dwell in sukkahs, tabernacles, tents, temporary dwelling places, and set wreaths upon their heads, and take leafy boughs and willows from the brook. Right? Isn't that what we do? At Sukkot, we do all those different things. And Abraham took branches of palm trees and the fruit of goodly trees, and every day going around the altar with the branches 7 times a day, in the morning he praised and gave thanks to Elohim for all things in joy. Well, there you go. And every day going around the altar with the branches 7 times a day. Maybe that is. I think it wasn't. I think it was more than just circling around counting them off. I think there was a celebration going on, and around the altar. Why? Because that would be considered the seat of Yahweh, where Yahweh's like, yeah, it's my feast. You're welcome, and let's hang out together. All right. So interesting chapter we finished off there in chapter 16 of Jubilees. And so let's move on to chapter 17. And in the first year of the 5th week, Yitzhak was weaned in this Jubilee, and Abraham made a great banquet in the 3rd month. Well, in the first year of the 5th week, Yitzhak was weaned in this Jubilee. And Abraham made a great banquet in the 3rd month on the day his son Yitzhak was weaned. Okay. What's the 3rd month? 3rd month is the month where we celebrate Shavuot, the Feast of Pentecost. And Ishmael, the son of Hagar, the Mitzri, was before the face of Abraham, his father, in this place, and Abraham rejoiced and blessed Elohim because he had seen his sons and had not died childless. And he remembered the words of which he had spoken to him on the day in which Lot had parted from him, and he rejoiced because Yahweh had given him seed upon the earth to inherit the earth, and he blessed with all his mouth the creator of all things. To me, I think he was quite vocal. I think he wasn't just doing it in his head. I think it's like, well, I'm praising y'all, but it's all in my head. No, it says that with all his mouth. Maybe that is an indicator that we should become more involved in praising y'all with all of our mouth. Okay? You know who you are. All right. I'm picking on people today. Yes, you know who you are when you're not lifting up your voice and using all your mouth to bless the creator of all things. Yeah. Just saying. Because there are plenty of different denominational people out there that they won't even sing when the hymns are being sung. They won't lift up their voice when songs unto Yahweh are given. They won't sing. Maybe they're ashamed. Maybe they don't feel like they can sing. Maybe they don't know how to sing on tune. Maybe they don't have an ear for it. But right there it says with all his mouth. It doesn't have to mean that we have an ear to hold a tune. I think it's really important for us to actually see that, and that we're not stoic. I think there's too many stoic people in the world anyway. And And why is it that other religions in the world aren't afraid to lift up their voices? But some reason or another, our culture has told us to be more reserved. And we carry that into the Hebraic roots of our faith. We carry it in, even we might have been more vocal when we were a Sunday going people. And then we switched to Shabbat, and because we had the revelation of it, and then all of a sudden people shut down. Why? Why would that be? I don't know why that would be. Because you're not feeling it. Maybe that's our fault among the Hebrew roots community, is that we haven't we haven't um, given the permission, or we haven't emphasized it. I know we have a lot of different people coming from a lot of different backgrounds, coming into the Hebraic roots of our faith, and some don't come from those type of traditions. Some come from more of those charismatic Pentecostal type traditions, and it's in them. But then somehow or another, does it get squashed? Hmm, I don't know. It's sad that it would be, because it didn't squash Abraham. Verse 4, and Sarah saw Ishmael playing and dancing, and Abraham rejoiced with great joy. And she became jealous of Ishmael and said unto Abraham, Cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of his bondwoman will not be heir with my son Isaac. I don't know if she said it that way, but nevertheless, because like dun dun dun, uh, the word is given. Okay, and it says, and the thing was grievous unto Abraham's sight, because of his maidservant and because of his son, that he should drive them from him. And Elohim said to Abraham, Let it not be grievous in your sight because of the child and because of the bondwoman. In all that Sarah has said unto you, hearken to her words and do them. For in Isaac shall your name and seed be called. But as for the son of this bondwoman, I'll make him a great nation, because he is of your seed. And Abraham rose up early in the morning and took bread and a bottle of water and placed them on the shoulders of Hagar and this and the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. With the water in the bottle was and the water in the bottle was spent, and the child thirsted and was not able to go on, and fell down. And his mother took him and cast him under an olive tree, and went and sat her down over against him at the distance of a bow shot. For she said, Let me not see the death of my child. And she sat, she wept. And an angel of Elohim, one of the holy ones, said unto her, Why weep you, Hagar? Arise, take the child, and hold him in your hand. For Elohim has heard your voice, and has seen the child. And she opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled her bottle with water, and she gave her child to drink. And she arose and went towards the wilderness of Paran. And the child grew and became an archer, and Elohim was with him. And his mother took him, a woman from among the daughters of the Mitzrayim. In other words, yeah, she went and found a wife from the Egyptian women, and she bore him a son, and called his name Nabayoth. For she said, Yahweh was nigh to me when I called upon him. And it came to pass in the 7th week, in the 1st year thereof, in the 1st month, in this Jubilee, on the 12th of this month, that there were voices in heaven regarding Abraham, that he was faithful in all that he had told him, and that he loved Yahweh, and that in every affliction he was faithful. And so wait a minute, stop right there. Wait a minute. Let's not just glance over this. Where did Hagar come from? A lot of times we think, was she just uh, a slave that Abraham and Sarah picked up when they were in Egypt? Um, it was said that when Pharaoh uh, told Abraham and Sarah, it's like, yeah, you guys are husband and wife, and you need to leave because it's bringing stuff on us, and we don't want that. So here, I'm going to pay you off and send you away. That Hagar, who would become the bond servant of Sarah, the maidservant of Sarah was a daughter of Pharaoh. So she would have been royalty. That's what it's been said. So where would Hagar, the daughter of royalty, go and find a wife for her son? Because wouldn't she want, knowing that that Ishmael, there, I mean, coming from Abraham, and herself would be royalty, and she's not just going to go find some woman off the streets to give to her. She's going to go back to her household and find a daughter of Pharaoh and give her to her son. This is really important, I think, when you understand how this culture works and how it thinks, that she had to find someone that would be on the same level as her son would be. Why? Because out of Ishmael would come a household of 12 tribes, uh, which would be a kingdom of 12 from 12 sons, and he would certainly be royalty. I think it's good to point that out. And so, in spite of everything that went on, and that she would have been a daughter of Egypt, meaning that she would be from the household of royalty. And so she had a baby with Ishmael, and it says, and the prince Mastema came and said before Elohim, behold, Abraham loves Isaac his son, and delights in him above all things else. Bid him to offer him as a burnt offering on the altar, and you will see that if he will do this command, that you will know if he is faithful in everything wherein you do try him. Oh, that old Slewfoot has just entered into the picture. Yes, one of those evil archangels saying, yeah, he when all things are good, Abraham is faithful to you. But you take away the very promise, will he still serve you? In fact, of all the different things that he's trying to uh, speak to him about and entice Abraham, and even talk to Yahweh, say, well, Yahweh, let's just test his faithfulness to you. Let's just test his obedience to you. Well, in testing the obedience is, yeah, that he will sacrifice, his sacrifice his child, right? Isn't that something, to sacrifice his child, a human sacrifice? It's all over the news today where they're sacrificing children among the elite because of the certain files that have been released. And in here, that's Mastema. Dum dum dum. Prince Mastema. So he's a prince of the power of the air. Come to Yahweh. But Yahweh knows Abraham. So let's read on. And Yahweh knew that Abraham was faithful in all his afflictions, for he had tried him through his country and with famine, and had tried him with the wealth of kings, and had tried him again through his woman when she was torn from him, and with circumcision, and had tried him through Ishmael and Hagar, his maidservant, when he sent them away. And in everything wherein he had tried him, he was found faithful, and his soul was not impatient, and he was not slow to act, for he was faithful and a lover of Yahweh. Yeah, because Mastema, this Prince Mastema, was just thinking he's never suffered this one before. Will he really be able to hold up? But Yahweh knew that he had already gone through a bunch of trials. I mean, think about the trials even before he left Babylon, before he left Chaldea. Just think about that. Growing up, the stuff that he had to go through, the things he had to endure just to preserve his own life. So, well, but he hasn't done this. He hasn't sacrificed his own child, his only child. Hmm. Very important for us to look at. Let's go a little bit further. Chapter 18. And Elohim said to him, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take your Yahid, whom you love, even Yitzhak, and go into the high country and offer him on one of the mountains, which I will point out to you. And he rose early in the morning, and he saddled his ass and took his 2 young men with him, Yitzhak his son, and clave the wood of the burnt offering. And he went to the place on the third day, the Hamakom. He went to the place on the mountain, the place. Not saying how far, but it's also interesting. And he took his 2 young men with him. So he took Isaac and Ishmael. That is also just keep in mind what's going on. And clave the wood of the burnt offering. So they brought their own wood. They're all ready. And I'm thinking, you know what? If you're going to do a burnt offering, you got to have a lot of wood. Just saying. You're just not throwing a couple logs on your back and carrying it up. But going on, it says, then clave the wood of the burnt offering, and he went into the place on the third day. And he saw the place afar off, the Hamakom. And he came to a well of water, and he said to his young men, Abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder. And it also seems like, okay, so it's like 2 young men with him, but there's more. It seems like there's others that are with him. He's got some other servants, but basically he tells Ishmael and the other, because it's plural, to stop right here at the well. Y'all hang out. We're going up ahead. And he came to the well of water, and he said to his young men, Abide here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder, and when we have worship, we will come again to you. See, it's a prophetic word. Abraham knew that they would return. And yet it hasn't been said, according to this text, that Abraham was going to have to give up his son. Right? Now, when we've studied it out before, and one of the interesting ideas was that Sarah knew why Abraham was taking his son to the place, to Hamakom. She believed that she would never see her son again. And it was after this that Sarah died. But anyway, we'll go on. We're going to get there. And it says, verse 5, and he took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son, and he took in his hand the fire and the knife, and they went both of them together to that place. And Isaac said to his father, Father, and he said, Here I am, my son. And he said unto him, Behold, the fire and the knife and the wood, but where's the sheep for the burnt offering, father? And he said, Elohim will provide himself a sheep for a burnt offering, my son. And he drew near the place of the mount of Elohim. So, and to me, that's Mount Zion. And he built an altar, and he placed the wood on the altar, and he bound Isaac his son, and placed him on the wood which was upon the altar, and stretched forth his hand to take the knife to slay Isaac his son. Well, we know how the story goes, but pretty intense right here. Oh no, he takes the knife to slay Isaac his son, and I stood before him and before the prince Mastema, and Yahweh said, Bid him not to lay his hand on this lad, nor to do anything to him, for I have shown that he fears Yahweh. Okay, I had to do that for the emphasis. But anyway, I mean, it's intense. I mean, he's got his hand is raised, and he's ready to come down with that knife in the son, and it's like, and notice it says that his son did not fight him. Isn't that a perfect a prophetic picture of Yeshua, who willingly laid down his life? And Abraham's son is like, oh, I'm the sheep. I'm the one. Okay. Well, then so be it. But nevertheless, and before the prince, and I stood before him, and I stood before him and before the prince Mastema, and Yahweh said, "Bid him not to lay his hand on the lad, nor to do anything to him, for I have shown that he fears Yahweh." Yeah, because this evil prince, power of the air, that has the name Mastemo, was overseeing the circumstances. Yeah, it's true. Bid him not to lay his hand on the lad, nor do anything to him, for I have shown that he fears Yahweh. I mean, was it Mastema that held back Abraham's hand? I don't know. I never pictured it that way, but I always pictured it as there's an angel of the Lord that grabbed his hand. Don't do it. All right. And I called to him from heaven, and he said to him, Abraham, Abraham. And he was terrified and said, Behold, here I am. And he said unto him, Lay not your hand upon the lad, neither do you anything to him. For now I have shown that you fear Yahweh, and have not withheld your son, your firstborn son, from me. And the prince Mastema was put to shame, and Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a ram, there's the sheep, caught by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram, and he offered it for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. And Abraham called that place Yahweh has seen, so that it is said, Yahweh has seen, that is Mount Zion. And Yahweh called Abraham by his name a second time from heaven, and he caused us to appear to him in the name of Yahweh. And he said, By myself have I sworn, says Yahweh, because you have done this thing and have not withheld your son, your Yaqid, your only son, from me, that in your descendant, that in blessing I will bless you, and in multiplying I will multiply your seed as the stars of heaven, and as the sand which is on the seashore. And your seed shall inherit the cities of its enemies, and in your seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice and have sworn to all that you are faithful unto me in all that I have said unto you. Go in peace, go in shalom. And Abraham went to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba. And Abraham dwelt by the well of the oath, and he celebrated this feast every year, 7 days, with joy. And he called it the feast of Yahweh, according to the 7 days, during which he went and returned in peace. And accordingly has it been ordained and written on the heavenly tablets, according or regarding Israel and his seed, that they should observe this feast 7 days with the joy of the feast. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Another reason is like layer upon layer of of in, of why it's a season of our joy, because it's here that Abraham was celebrating all of these things that Yahweh had given, and here yet again how Yahweh provided the lamb. Just like he had said, Yahweh would provide the sheep. Yahweh would provide, and he did. And he's like, yeah, all right, so we're going to celebrate this thing even more, because and then he gets the promise then reiterated again, that your descendants are going to be like the stars in the heaven. Your descendants are going to be like the sand of the sea. This is who you are. Why? Because you obeyed me, and it's credited to you as righteousness, because you're righteous, Abraham, because you believed me, and you took me at my word. That's what Yahweh's saying. And that is the righteous thing. See, that is really the blessing in all of this. And again, where did that take place? It took place on Mount Zion, which is considered the most holy place on earth. Of all the different places, we have Mount Zion and we have Mount Sinai, and uh, and there's one other place that that they've hinted at when we've gone through the book of Enoch, and we've gone through the book of and when we've gone through Jasher, and now we're looking at Jubilees, and how it talks about these 3 different mountains. Well, we got the 2 of them down, and we know what it is. And yeah, Tammy, I mean, isn't that interesting? Wasn't the Akida at Shavuot? And that's, yeah, I mean, right. That's what we're thinking. And yet, see, Jubilees is putting this layer in here that causes us, one, is to recognize. I think more than anything, I don't know what the distance and the time was, as to, okay, one was happening, this sacrifice was given at Shavuot of Isaac, and Yahweh provided the lamb. And yet when Sukkot came along, here they were celebrating. It just, I mean, it's basically just told us they're celebrating at Sukkot. A big reason. I mean, can you imagine like the talk of the town? Because, I mean, he's living in a country of the Canaanites where there's all sorts of human sacrifices going on. And yet now he's like, Yahweh's like, we don't do human sacrifices. You don't appease me by giving up your son, your children. No, you appease me by believing me. Believe in what I said. And I count it to you as righteousness. And believing is not like mental assent, by the way. It's like you believe it because we do it. We put action to it. So, all right. Well, that's where I'm going to leave it. We're going to pick up on chapter 19 next time around. But it's kind of interesting, isn't it? It's a interesting little journey tonight through the book of Jubilees. And we've had 2 or 3 chapters. But by the way, that's what I didn't say this beginning. Jubilees, it's about a journey. It's not about like the study. It's like we're going to be scholarly about it. No, it's about the adventure of walking through these passages. Anyway, it's all good. We'll see y'all next time. Shalom.
If you missed today's show or want to watch it again or want to tell someone where they can watch this episode, go to lambnetwork.tv where you will find this show and all the other live Lamb show archives in the on-demand section of the website. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to tell someone about the Messianic Lamb Network. We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussions, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the lambnetwork.tv website. I'm Sandi Craig, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network. Thank you.